Välkomna tillbaka. Nu ska vi byta ämne och vi ska bege oss till ett av världens mest laddade områden, nämligen Västbanken. Bilderna här bakom mig är de bilder som möter oss dagligen i nyhetsmedia. Men i de här områdena bor människor, där finns också en vardag. I den här romanen, Uppe på höjden, så har författaren beskrivit hur vardagslivet är för de israeliska bosättarna. Det är en fiktiv berättelse, men bosättarna kände igen sig när han mötte dem, och det handlar mycket om humor och hur man försöker överleva bland bomber, hot och terror. Jag mötte författaren. Welcome, Asaf Gafron.
Thank you.
You are the writer of Uppe på höjden in Swedish, The Hilltop in English. And to read this book is about to get into the daily life of the settlements that we have seen so often in all these news, stories on TV. But you are going into all these people. It's fiction, but I know that it's a lot about what it is in the daily life there.
Yeah, I write fiction. I'm a fiction writer, but I like to write my fiction about the reality, and specifically the reality in Israel and the controversial sides of the conflict. And this is a story, the settlers and the settlements fascinated me for a long time. Not as someone who necessarily agrees with them. I do not. Politically, I'm on the other side. But as a writer, as a novelist, I find their lives really fascinating in different ways.
If we get into the personalities in your story, it's also, you laugh a lot. The war is surrounding and the conflict is surrounding these people, but the daily life is more or less based on how to grow olives, tomatoes, mushrooms, and how to get along and try to get as much land as you can. And they do everything to get more land.
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, it's about life. It's about families and relationships and work, like everyone experiences. But of course, there they do this kind of everyday life in a very controversial place.
Could you take an example? Take, for instance, one of the main characters you have, the novel starts with. Could you introduce him?
Yeah, Otniel Assis, that's his name.
Yes.
He's the founder and the leader. He's like the unofficial sheriff of that settlement. It's a very small settlement, what is called an illegal outpost, the smaller settlements where there are maybe a dozen trailers on a hilltop. And he started by getting bored with his life. It was a little bit too bourgeois for him, and he wanted to grow up a few vegetables for his wife, for the salad for his wife and daughter. And he had a little row with his neighbors, so he walked and he found this hilltop and he started growing stuff there.
He just take a piece of land.
Yeah, he just went there and said, "I'll grow my crops here," and this is how they do it. He's also, maybe from the characters in the novel, he's the classic settler, the idealist, the political guy. But even he starts from growing a few things and then a little hut to guard it and a little storage space, and then someone says, "Hey, why don't we move to live there?" And they put 2 trailers there and then a little more, and then they have some connections with different authorities, so someone paves the road to there, and then they have electricity.
And sometimes the authorities said, "Move."
Yeah,
you cannot continue.
Officially they cannot continue because nothing is done with paperwork and through the legal system. But unofficially, people in the different authorities, and there are many different authorities who control the area and their lives. The army and the ministries, different ministries. So they have many friends, many partners who help them behind the back, behind the law.
And then there are the Palestinians, of course.
Yes, there's...
And some of them become friends or partners, and it's a very strange way of connecting in a daily basis.
Yeah, I mean, Palestinians are there, they are neighbors, they share, in the end, they share the land, and there are stories of cooperations. There are stories where they work together. For example, the settlers would go into Arab villages, Palestinian villages, and buy stuff in the grocery store or fix their cars in the garage. And the Palestinians will work in construction in the settlements. And sometimes
the Israeli settlements.
In the Israeli settlements. And sometimes there would be even friendships. And I heard some stories. These are stories you don't hear much in the news. You hear more about the violence. And of course, I'm not saying that there is an idyllic friendship there, because it's mainly about tension and violence. But you do have these cooperations that come out of a necessity to just live together.
And then there is a ceremony, and they are very proud. They have a playground for children, and you know, and they sing and have this ceremony, and then they get the message that take everything down. This is forbidden.
So yeah, so as I said, because it is not legal, and there are organizations who are trying to monitor the settlements and to kind of put a stop to all the illegal behavior that is going on. So there's always this endless cat and mouse game with the army, with the authorities, and sometimes the army will give them a note to evacuate. You need to go.
You went there, there was an event, and although it's a fiction story, and you sometimes, when you read it, when I read it, I thought, is it really true? Could it be like this? And then you read it, and you told your story, and they agreed that, yeah, you're pretty close to the
well, when I researched it, and I for about 2 years, I traveled all over the West Bank, but I ended up going specifically to one settlement, one small settlement, and that became the inspiration for the settlement in the book. And the real one is called Tkoa Dalet, Tkoa D. And about 1.5 years after the book was published, I got this phone call, and they invited me. And at first I wasn't sure what they wanted, and I was a little nervous, and I asked a friend to come with me as backup. But it was really a lovely evening. It was really nice. There were some criticisms, some people who said, oh, it's stereotypical left-wing literature about settlers. But actually, people contradicted this woman who said that. And it was, you know, we don't agree with each other politically, but it was an evening, a conversation about literature.
Interesting.
And I think they were proud that there was this book that is based on them. I kept telling them, it's not about you, it's fiction, but of course it's inspired by the place.
Most of the time you live in Israel, and how do you get used to the violence, the suicide bombing? How do you, can you really get used to it?
I don't know, but somehow we do. I mean, I was in Israel last summer when every day for about 7 weeks there were sirens. Where I live in Tel Aviv, there were sirens and there were rockets, and you hear the sirens, and you go to the shelter and you hear the rockets exploding in the air, and of course Tel Aviv, you know, we didn't really suffer real hits, and other parts of the country, and of course in Gaza, people suffered much more. But that was a daily thing. But even then, even in those 7 weeks, you hear the siren, you go into the shelter, and then you wait a few minutes, and it's over. You hear the explosion, and it's over. and then you just go on with your life.
You go and shop for dinner.
You go
home.
sit in a cafe, and you take the kid from kindergarten, and you bring them back home, and you go on working.
Do you think it affects the people and you, for instance, more deeply than you are aware of?
Yeah, I think for sure. I think we have post-traumatic society. We have people who are scared, and you saw it in the election results.
Yeah, a lot of people lost hope.
Yeah, I think people, at the end of the day, they really fear for the security, and they go to whoever they feel most confident with.
What do you think about the future of this area that you are writing about, the West Bank?
It's hard to say. The way Israel is going towards, the way, and Israel is the one who...
If you would describe what you mean, going towards...
Well,
more confrontative?
Yeah, more confrontational, less trying to achieve peace.
Negotiation.
Yeah, less negotiations, not really trying to reach peace. And Israel is the one who's controlling the way things are going, because Israel is the one with the power. And even yesterday, Abbas, a Palestinian leader, said, "I'm prepared to go back to negotiations without conditions." And of course, Israel did not even respond to that. So the way it is, and the backing this policy gets from the people, like we saw last month in the elections, I don't know. It seems quite depressing for me, for people who believe in peace.
Any light, any optimism at all?
I don't know. I mean, what people were doing in the last few weeks is analyzing the results of the elections, and there are people who see some kind of positives. I think historically the left did manage to win a few elections in recent years, but it depended on a person, on a personality. I told you 2 minutes ago that the Israeli population, they want someone they feel secure with. And when the left provides someone like that, like Rabin or Barak, then the people vote. So if the left can find someone like that, and this someone could have the courage to go like Rabin did, and to try and really achieve peace. So maybe we will have a chance, but we need this person. I don't know who it is, and we need and we need him to be, or her to be, courageous enough and do it.
But while all these things are happening, the daily life must go on, and even on the hills where the settlers are. Thank you very much for being here in my show.
Thank you.
Thank you.